Hello, beautiful. Lovely to see you. Good to be here inside in my lounge when it's cold and wet and, generally wintry outside. And because this is a Facebook Live, and I have to wait for it to propagate on the internet and for my dear husband to share it out around the different groups so that people can join us on live, if you're wondering why I'm going to start showing you crystals, because I am, that's why, because we've got to give it a bit of time to do its thing. And if you're on YouTube, and you've never met me before, wherever you are, my name is Oneness Evolving, and I'm here to tell you what I've been writing this week, because I'm writing content which, for a website, it is written for online, but it'll probably end up being a book, although writing for print and writing for the web are not the same thing, believe it or not. And it's God of me. It's how to be God of me. How do I be God of me? How do I master myself? How do I change me? And so I've been writing about that. And if you're thinking, well, where do you start? That was what I asked myself, it might be almost a year ago now. And you can go to my Patreon and you can see the progress updates that I've posted. And you'll find that there are videos on YouTube. But check it out on Patreon because everything is organised there and you don't have to hunt. So while I'm burbling about that, I'm just going to show you some rocks because it's too cold outside. So this is labradorite. And I have rocks, right? And I like showing them off and enjoying them. And the thing about labradorite is it's got this beautiful blue flash. Some of them have yellow and some of them have pink, but this one's blue. And yeah, this is lovely. It's sort of greeny on one side and very dark blue on this one. And you do have to look at it to see that it's heart-shaped because it's kind of, it's very rounded, a very puffy heart shape. But I enjoy that, It's a beautiful piece of rock, and I'm glad that I get to show it off and share it with you today. So another lovely thing that I'm going to show you, it's just a tumbled rock, but this is howlite. And it's white for obvious reasons, and it's got, I don't know what the veins of dark rock are that run through it, but it's quite typical of howlite. Maybe it's some kind of quartz, I don't know. But I just enjoy this. It's quite smooth. It's not smooth like quartz. It's smooth like howlite. It's kind of silky and almost chalky, but not. Smoother than chalk. And it's beautiful to hold. So I'm just enjoying that. Decided I wanted to share that with you today. You can see that the stone has fractured into something that's kind of oblong. It's got straight edges and then it's been tumbled to make it smooth. But yeah, I just wanted you to see that. So, you can use your associative memory to try and see a picture there. Really, what would that be? I don't know. This, you could almost say, is like the surface of a wave or the sea and, with the sky. Or maybe it's hills with sky. You can look for pictures in anything. If you look long enough, your brain will find something that it thinks matches it. But that's howlite today. And this one, I just wanted to show you because it's beautiful. It was given to me by a friend who now lives in the South Island of New Zealand, and I'm up here in the north. And obviously it is a quartz point and it's very transparent. You can you can see me talking through it. So it's very high transparency and it's got all these little teeny crystals growing on it and some of them are growing through it. And yeah, see that one's on the outside, but there is one that's growing right through it. See if I can find it and show you. Yeah, okay, through in here. That little one there, it's not on the outside. Those little crystals are growing in. And there's another one, and it's just beautiful. See, and it's got, that little crystal is on the outside and it's on the inside. So it's quite fabulous the way it's grown. I don't know what the conditions have to be for a crystal to grow like this with little ones growing through it and on top of it. On top of it's obviously ordinary. But isn't it fabulous? I just really enjoy it. It's so beautiful to look through and all the detail in it. And so I wanted to share that with you. All right. Now, if that video hasn't propagated out, it's never going to, so I'm going to get going. So what I wrote about today was perceptions. And I've been writing about perceptions today because I've been writing about The 95% of us, that is our unconscious mind. The 95% of us that does everything for us that we don't think about. I mean, seriously, while you're talking to me, well, you might be in your mind, while you're listening to me, while you're holding your phone or sitting in your computer or whatever you're doing, paying attention to this, who's making your heart beat? If you're walking along the street, who's moving your legs? What's happening with all the things that are going on? Hello, gorgeous being. I can see you popped on. It's lovely to see you. Who's running your body? When you're walking along the street talking to your friend, how does your body know to walk? And how do you know, oh, it's got cold, I'll put on my jacket? You're not even thinking about it. You're just talking with your friend. That's the piece you're thinking about. But everything else you're doing, you're just doing. So the 95% of us that we are not conscious of is doing all that stuff for us. And that includes running our body. It includes our beliefs. It includes our attitudes. It includes our emotional reactions, our behaviours. What else is it? I made a whole big list. I better look at it from last week because I wrote it down. Skills, behaviours, emotional reactions, habits, associative memories, attitudes, beliefs and perceptions. All of these make up our unconscious mind. And all of those things are what we use, My skills, they're unconscious. I don't need to think about being able to breathe or being able to pick up a knife and fork and eat. I don't need to think about being able to drive. I just know how to do it. Now, I do actually think pretty carefully about it because on the road you can die. But I know how to do it. I know how to reach out and open a door. I know how to get my keys and put it in the keyhole and turn the lock to open the door. That's just, it's unconscious. It's memorized. I know how to do it. And so all of those skills and those behaviors and that person that you love to hate or that you love to love, or that place that you go and you just always feel good, all of those are memorized emotional reactions. It's automatic. We don't think about it. And so last week I wrote a lot about those things, and I finished last week writing about beliefs. And a belief is just something that you keep on telling yourself so many times that you believe it. And we've all heard stories of people talking themselves into believing things that they thought were impossible, and then they go do it. Or conversely, talking themselves out of things because they just keep saying, I can't do it. It's never going to happen. This is impossible. And so it is. And mind power and all that stuff. But beliefs are just things that we keep on thinking and feeling the same way over and over again until we really believe that it's true. And it's kind of like if you remember what happens in your brain when you think a thought, or if you don't know, what happens in your brain when you think a thought is that neurons fire and there's an electrical charge that goes from neuron to neuron to neuron, and in order for that electrical charge to move so that you can have your thought, it has to be passed from neuron to neuron to neuron, and to do that, there are neurotransmitters. And the neurotransmitters make a downward cascade of chemistry that means your body gets to feel whatever thought your brain just thought. Whatever you just thought, your body gets to feel because of the neurotransmitters. And so when you do that over and over and over again, the connections between those neurons where you're still thinking the same thought, well, they get stronger. And you get more chemistry, and so the feelings get stronger. And it literally just builds up and builds up and builds up. And in your brain, there's a ton of hardware. Hello, gorgeous people. There's a lot of hardware being built up in your brain, and your body's getting really used to the chemistry of that thought that you keep thinking. And that is actually what happens, is the belief. It's just this really easy to think and really easy to feel thought and feeling that you've done it so much that it's just what you believe. So I was writing about that last week, and I used an example of, you have a job that you enjoy, and you go to the job, and you love to give good service, and you enjoy everybody you work with and what you do, and then one day your boss has a really bad hair day, and they dump shit on you, putting it very bluntly, and then your attitude about your job changes completely and you don't enjoy being there because you're scared your boss is going to be horrible to you again and you hate being there and you want to be somewhere else and all that stuff, and then, time goes by and in your mind you're remembering the day, thinking, right? You're remembering what happened and how it felt over and over again. And that neurology in your brain is getting stronger and stronger, and your body's getting used to feeling that anger and that shame and that fear and everything else. And so those thoughts, that attitude of, oh my God, I don't want to be at my work because my boss did this to me and they might do it again. And it goes round and round and round, and it becomes entrenched in the brain and in the body, and that's a belief. But if you keep doing that over and over and over and over and over again, or anything like that, it becomes what's called a perception, and that's what I wrote about today. And I had to scratch my head, almost literally, to think, how am I going to explain a perception the way that I want to explain it? I mean, what is a perception, really? And I started, as I quite often do, just by going to the internet and saying, what is a perception? And I got a few little things and put them on a piece of paper, on a screen, and looked at them and went, well, really, what is a perception? And ultimately, I ended up telling a story, and I'm going to tell you the story now. But just remember that it starts with a thought and a feeling and an attitude, which is the way you decide that you think and feel about something and how you respond to it. And then if you keep on having the same attitude, the attitude becomes a belief. I really believe this now. And then what happens with the belief is that it goes unconscious. You don't even know that you believe it or you see the world that way. It becomes a perception. It becomes like a pair of sunglasses that you never take off. So this is the story. A number of years ago, when I was a teenager, and you can guess, I remember watching a television documentary about apartheid in South Africa, which was still a real thing back then. There was apartheid in South Africa then. And, since then, Nelson Mandela made massive changes and lots of things have shifted. And I'm sure that there is still a massive amount of change going on in South Africa. I know it is not easy. It's not all sunshine and roses. But the actual system of apartheid is gone now. Back then, it was still there. And this documentary, the presenter, the person who was presenting the thing, and, the team had gone to South Africa, and they were gathering information about it. And it was probably an hour long, but this is the piece I remember. There was a young man, and I remember he was wearing a blazer. He looked like he'd gone to a private school. And he might have been 16 or 17 or 18. And he was well-groomed, he was cultured, he was sincere. And I remember that the interviewer was talking to him about apartheid. And this is the one piece that I remember. The interviewer asked him something like, well, why do we need this? Why does it have to be like this? Why can't the black people look after themselves? And he said, with this peculiar look on his face, which I never really managed to unpack. I did a little bit this morning because I stopped and think about it. He said, well, it's because they're just not as intelligent as we are. As if, that they need us to look after them, or that they're not capable. They can't. And the look on his face, I finally decided this morning when I was writing and after I'd thought about it, was the look of a person who was just saying something that he knew to say. It was like, it was automatic. Oh, they're just not as intelligent as we are. But because he was saying it to somebody who was interviewing him and there were cameras rolling and all that, there was a conflict in him. I could actually see him kind of listening to himself as he said it and almost questioning it a little bit, which was interesting because I didn't realize that then. I just watched him and thought, something. But at the time, I felt a flash of anger. It's like, what are you talking about? Ugh! And I felt like that because I was a teenager. I had pale skin. I had red hair. And I lived, and still do, live in a multicultural society where there are lots of people with different colours of skin. And I knew absolutely, without any question, that they were just as smart as me. I was like, what the hell? And as I had this experience, there was just this light bulb that went on in my head, and I thought, but he's grown up in that society where they believe that's true. He's never ever been told or seen or experienced anything else. Of course he thinks that's right. And now I look at it and I think, oh, that's a perception. He didn't have any concept that there was anything else, any other way to perceive dark-skinned people except that they must be less intelligent than me. Because what? He got born in that society, and for his first 7 years, just like all of us, he absorbed the attitudes and the behaviours and the thoughts and the feelings and everything that was happening around him. And what was he getting? Black people are less than white people. So, of course, that was his unconscious operating system that was just programmed into his brain and body, and he never questioned it. So the first 7 years, just that's how it is. And then as he got older, you get to age 7 or whenever it happens and you start having an analytical mind, and because you need to fit in with your peers and your friends and your family, you keep reflecting the same thoughts and feelings and attitudes and beliefs and everything else as they do because you need to fit in. And by the time he's this attractive, young-looking young man who's sincere and thoughtful and educated and everything else, that's just what he believed. It was more than a belief. It was a perception. Every single person of colour that he would see, without even thinking about it, he would perceive them as less than. Because he wouldn't even realise that he was perceiving them as less than. And the example that I would use is that if he heard of a person of colour getting a Nobel Prize, he would automatically, without thought, think there must be a mistake, they're a freak of nature, or they cheated to do it. And I'm not saying that to be horrible to him. He was this gorgeous young guy. That's just his perception. He would not be able to see what you and I know. The black people are just as brilliant as coffee-coloured people, are just as brilliant as yellow people and red-skinned and blue-skinned and green-skinned and whatever it is. The colour of the skin makes no difference. It's rubbish. It's wrong. To him it was absolutely real, and he didn't even know that it was an absolute truth to him and it was completely wrong because he was unconscious to it. He had no idea. And there's a wonderful thing that Dr. Joe Dispenza says, which illustrates the problem beautifully. He says, if you're inside the jar, you can't see the label. And that's true. You're just inside the jar. This is how my world is. This is how people are. This is my perception. That's what a perception is. It's an attitude that's solidified into a belief that has gone underground so you don't even see it anymore. It's just how you see the world. And what that means is that we do not see reality. Because remember, we only perceive reality according to what's wired in our brain. It's like if you have someone who's been blind from birth and then for some miraculous reason they start to see, and you show them an orange. Now, we know that an orange is a spherical thing and it's, and it's round and it's got that dimpled skin and it smells like this. You hand someone who's been blind forever and they've started to see an orange, they will not recognize it. They will need to close their eyes and smell it, and then they'll say, oh, that's an orange. They have wiring in their brain that says it feels like this, it smells like this, it tastes like this. They have nothing in their brain that says, if I see that round thing with stippled skin over there, and it's obviously a sphere, and do I even know what a sphere looks like, that means it's an orange. We can only perceive reality with whatever's in our brain, with the wiring that's in our brain, the patterns that our brain can recognize. So that young man had absolutely no wiring in his brain to recognize that a person with dark skin could be brilliant. To him, they were all just less. And there's a perception. There's nothing in his brain to perceive anything else. And so if there's nothing in our brain, in my brain, to perceive maybe that the person I thought, the person that definitely hurt me 2 years ago is not a monster. It's just they made a really big mistake. And maybe they want to fix it. but I'm not ready to deal with them, because my perception of them, or it may even be that my perception of myself is that I just can't deal with that person right now. But it is a perception, it's not the reality. I don't know what the reality is until I decide to actually face up to that person and have a conversation with them. My perception is just what I've remembered in my brain, and it's 2 years old. They have nothing to do with reality. So we don't see things how they are. This is another Dr. Joe Dispenza quote. We don't see things how they are. We see things how we are. And for example, 4 people in a room, a 5th person walks in. That person that just walked in, every single person will respond to that 5th person differently. The first person might say, oh, that looks like my grandfather who I loved. And they feel really, excited to meet this person. The second person might say, oh, that looks like my work colleague. Okay. A third person might say, that person was horrible to me a year ago. I'm leaving. It's our perception. Based upon our past experiences and our memories and what we can record and remember in our brain, we perceive whatever reality actually is. And there is so much more to reality than what we can see and hear and smell and taste and sense. But, we've got to start somewhere. So our perception, that the information comes in from the outside world or from our thoughts. You can have a perception, you can just have a thought about something and you can have a perception that applies to that. To go back to our example, the young man can be sitting, staring out the window and one day think about some person with coloured skin that he knows, and automatically will think, oh yeah, well they're just dumber than me. Because that's his perception, because there's no wiring in his brain to think anything else. We are the same. Until we are able to open up to something new, to dare to take in something new, we're just always going to see people the way we see them, even if it's completely wrong. So perceptions are really powerful because we don't know they're there. We can't tell what we perceive. The last thing I wrote in this little section is that perceptions are like when you have bad breath. Everybody else can smell that your breath stinks, but you can't. And we probably all, we've sat and listened to somebody who's wittering on about something that is obviously wrong, really wrong. Like, the example of you have a job and the boss has done something horrible to you and you just, I hate my job, I want to leave now, the boss is a horrible person. And for example, the boss may actually be trying a little bit later because they screwed up, they didn't even apologize at the time. Maybe 4 weeks later, they come to their senses and realize, oh, I really made a mess of this. I need to, make things right with my employee. But your perception of that boss is that they're a monster. So you don't want to go anywhere near them because they're too scary. You're not seeing reality. You're not seeing that they've moved on. You're just seeing them the way that you see them because you haven't moved on. And fair enough, it was horrible. So we don't see reality as it is. We see it as we are. We see it through the lens of our experience. This is the one thing I forgot to say. The young man with his worrying in his brain, it's like he's wearing a set of sunglasses and he never takes them off. And those sunglasses just paint things a certain colour. And he doesn't know that he's wearing the sunglasses. It's just normal to him. And, that's how we are. It is how we are. And we have to really start paying attention to ourselves and thinking, well, hang on a minute. Is that actually how I want to think? Is that how I want to feel? Do I really want to behave like that? Do I really want to show up like that? We have to actually start looking at ourselves. And that's challenging enough. But we have to start paying attention to even start to wonder, what am I actually really perceiving and believing and thinking and attituding about all of this? Because that's the 95% of us that's unconscious. That's the 95% of us that runs our lives when we are not paying attention. And if our perception is that the world is a dangerous or scary place, or that the world owes us a living, or that we are loved, or that things go our way, or whatever it is, that is just how it seems to keep showing up for us. Because nothing else can get into our reality because we can't see it. Right in front of us, like the orange, the blind person who's never seen an orange. You don't recognize it as an orange. It's just this weird thing that you don't understand. So that's perceptions. It was an interesting thing to write about, and it took me the whole morning. So thank you for joining in. I love having you share this space with me. Check it out on Patreon if you haven't. There's lots of things there for free. And if you would like to support me on this journey, that would be fabulous too. Thank you so much for joining. Big love. I'll be back in a week with another installment. Until then, big hugs.